In the black ocean beyond our solar system, sunlight fades into memory. Out there, in that ancient silence, a small machine has been drifting for nearly half a century, alone but still awake. Voyager 2, launched in 1977, was never meant to return. It was humanity's message in a bottle, built not to survive forever, but to bear witness to the universe beyond our reach. It crossed Jupiter and Saturn, raced past Uranus and Neptune, and finally slipped beyond the heliosphere, out of the sun's protection into true interstellar space. For decades, it floated through the void, sending back whispers of plasma waves, radiation, and magnetic fields. But while the world moved on, Voyager 2 never stopped listening, and last month, it spoke back. At first, the transmission seemed harmless, a faint, low hum buried in static. Nothing unusual for a spacecraft almost 20 billion kilometers away. But when NASA's Deep Space Network decoded the signal, they found something impossible. A repeating burst, precise, rhythmic, deliberate. Not random cosmic noise, but a pulse with structure. It repeated every 11.2 seconds. That's not the language of chaos. That's the rhythm of a clock. Engineers thought it was a glitch, a simple echo from deep space interference. But when they dug through older telemetry logs, they found the same pulse weeks earlier, identical down to the microsecond, completely missed by human eyes. When artificial intelligence models were used to filter the signal, the pattern became clear. It wasn't random static. It was getting stronger, and it wasn't coming from Voyager, it was coming from something near it. That's when the questions began. Voyager 2's sensors, primitive by today's standards, but still sensitive, started picking up strange fluctuations in plasma density, faint changes in the interstellar medium around it. The readings didn't match any known cosmic activity. The pulse appeared to be tracking the probe, moving along its same vector. Something out there was following Voyager. The signal wasn't stationary. It was shifting position in sync with the spacecraft's movement, speeding up and slowing down as though it was pacing Voyager 2 through space. When analysts simulated its trajectory, every model failed. The object wasn't drifting with gravity, it was correcting itself. It was adjusting course in response to Voyager's transmissions. And here's where it gets stranger. It wasn't broadcasting toward Earth. It was bouncing Voyager's own data stream back into the void, like an echo chamber reflecting our voice deeper into space. For the first time, scientists had to ask a question no one at NASA ever wanted to ask. What if something was answering? Inside the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, panic turned into obsession. Data scientists began tearing through every frequency. Cryptographers, linguists, and mathematicians joined in, trying to find meaning in the pulse. It wasn't just a signal, it was structured information. Binary bursts arranged in clusters that, when mapped visually, formed shapes, spirals, fractals, geometric alignments. The first time they rendered the pattern on screen, the control room went silent. It wasn't random, it was art. The pattern mirrored shapes carved into our planet thousands of years ago, forms found in Sumerian cuneiform, Mayan calendars, and the Nazca lines of Peru. It wasn't an identical match, but close enough to unsettle even the most skeptical scientists. The signal wasn't just data, it was language written in electromagnetic harmonics. Some theorists proposed a chilling possibility. Maybe this wasn't a communication at all. Maybe it was a test, a filter to see if we were capable of recognizing meaning hidden inside noise. For nearly 50 years, Voyager 2 had been broadcasting humanity's curiosity into the void. Maybe, finally, something wanted to see if we were listening carefully enough to notice when the universe whispered back. If that was true, then humanity had just answered a question it didn't understand, and passed a test it didn't know it was taking. Then things started happening faster. The pulse grew louder, its pattern tightening. The object following Voyager began matching the probe's faint thruster bursts in real time, adjusting speed within seconds. Triangulation placed the source roughly 3 million kilometers behind Voyager, close enough to be watching, but far enough to remain invisible. And then, something no one could explain. The signal inverted. Its hydrogen resonance, the same frequency used in interstellar communication research, flipped polarity. It wasn't just copying our signal anymore, it was rewriting it. What was once Voyager's voice, that faint data stream filled with images of Earth, sounds of humanity, and mathematical greetings, was now returning distorted, restructured, as if rewritten by something that understood its purpose better than we did. The pulse had become a reply, and deep in mission control, one realization began to take hold. The silence between those pulses wasn't empty. It was waiting. As one engineer put it later, it felt like the pause before someone speaks your name. What came next confirmed every fear that had been whispered since the anomaly began. Voyager's sensors recorded motion, an object traveling along its same path, not orbiting, not floating, but tracking it perfectly. It moved in small bursts, accelerating, then stopping, keeping pace with the probe like a shadow that refused to fall behind. Its movement didn't follow gravity or momentum, it followed intention. No asteroid behaves like that. No fragment drifts like that. Whatever it wasn't a rock. It was aware. And in that moment, the realization spread through the lab like electricity. Voyager 2, humanity's furthest, oldest voice in the dark, wasn't alone anymore. It was being followed. And perhaps the most terrifying part wasn't that something was out there, but that it had been there all along. Because the data suggested one last thing. The pulse didn't begin when we detected it. It began decades ago. We just didn't know how to listen until now. When the first confirmation came in, it was dismissed as coincidence, a numerical echo or a misread frequency spike. But then a second data batch arrived from a different deep space network array half a world away. The same pulse, the same rhythm, the same impossible signature, and this time, stronger. That was when Mission Control realized something they'd been avoiding for days. Whatever was near Voyager 2 wasn't just responding to its signal, it was learning from it. The transmissions weren't static anymore, they were evolving. The gaps between pulses shortened slightly, as if the source was refining its timing, synchronizing with our instruments. The spectral fingerprint, the twisted hydrogen resonance, had begun to split into harmonics, layering itself into subfrequencies. It was building something inside the data, something self-similar and recursive. It was intelligence building a rhythm. And then, it changed direction. Using triangulation from 3 antennas across the deep space network, analysts calculated that the pulse source was no longer stationary behind Voyager. It was drifting, not randomly, but deliberately, adjusting its vector to move closer. This wasn't speculation. Voyager's magnetometer readings began to shift, showing faint fluctuations in the surrounding interstellar plasma, ripples in a sea that should have been still. The object was close enough to disturb the space around it. At first, engineers argued it might be a relic, a piece of debris from an old mission somehow caught in the same trajectory. But that theory didn't last long. Nothing built by humans could move like that, accelerating and stopping without inertia, reacting to radio frequencies as though they were instructions. The realization hit the team hard. Whatever was out there was using our own signal as a guide. When NASA issued its internal memo classifying the anomaly as a reflective entity, no one outside Mission Control noticed. But within hours, security protocols changed. Access logs vanished. Data servers went dark. From that moment forward, Voyager 2's transmissions were routed through encrypted private networks. The public feed, which had been running since 1977, quietly went offline. And then, the silence broke. 5 minutes after Voyager's last scheduled data burst, a new signal hit the deep space network, a narrowband radio wave that matched the probe's frequency almost perfectly. But this wasn't from Voyager. Its timestamp placed it nearly 3 hours too early. The source was somewhere in the space between Voyager and the heliopause, that invisible boundary where the solar wind dies and the true interstellar medium begins. It wasn't a random burst. It was a directed transmission. When they decoded the waveform, there was no telemetry, no science data, just a tone, a clean, perfect hum. The frequency modulated with uncanny precision, rising and falling in fractal symmetry. At first, it sounded like nothing, but when analyzed through Fourier transformation, the tone revealed structure, not words, not images, but ratios. Golden ratio, prime intervals, Fibonacci sequencing, the language of construction itself. Whatever had sent it wasn't using speech. It was using the blueprint of nature, the universal mathematics embedded in galaxies, DNA, and everything alive. It wasn't just replying, it was introducing itself. The deeper the analysis went, the more it became clear that this wasn't an echo. The signal wasn't coming to us. It was passing through us. It was bouncing off Voyager's own transmission, using our probe as a relay. We weren't in control anymore. And that's when the second Voyager, Voyager 1, billions of miles away, picked up the same pattern. A faint electromagnetic fluctuation rippled through its instruments. Different location, same frequency, same rhythm. Two spacecraft on opposite ends of the solar system, receiving the same pulse within hours of each other. Coincidence was no longer an option. Whatever this was, it wasn't a point in space. It was a system. For decades, both Voyagers had been drifting silently, broadcasting humanity's message to the cosmos, the golden record, a greeting of music, languages, coordinates, and images. But now, something had found it, and instead of answering in words, it had spoken back in the only language that couldn't be mistranslated: mathematics. As data poured in, the scientists realized that the pulse's pattern wasn't random. Each new burst built upon the last, layering meaning like a conversation growing more complex. Machine learning models identified repeating sequences embedded in the modulation that looked eerily similar to binary encoding, except reversed, as if the information were meant to be read backward. That was when they decided to run a test. Using the same frequency Voyager 2 was transmitting on, Mission Control sent a controlled ping, a basic binary pattern like a hello. The signal took 18 hours to reach the spacecraft and just as long to return. But when it did, the reply was instant, not from Voyager, from behind it. The pulse came back mirrored and amplified, but now carrying a modulation that matched the test pattern structure, as though the entity had caught it mid-flight, interpreted it, and sent it back rewritten. It wasn't just listening, it was engaging. From that moment, Voyager 2 was no longer just a scientific instrument, it had become a bridge. Then something unexpected happened. Voyager transmitted again on its own. Not from a command uplink, not from any scheduled data window, but spontaneously. The signal came through encoded in a way Voyager wasn't even capable of producing. Its analog systems had somehow initiated a digital compression routine, one that didn't exist in its software. When decoded, the data revealed something that froze the room. It was the golden record, but wrong. The sounds of Earth, Beethoven, the wind, human greetings, all rearranged, pitched lower, reversed, distorted, as if someone had taken our message and rewritten it to send back. Even the etched coordinates of our solar system were inverted, pointing not to our sun, but to regions of interstellar darkness, voids where no stars exist. It was as if the universe had flipped our greeting around and asked a question. "We've heard you. Now do you understand?" NASA never released that file, but insiders later confirmed that during those transmissions, something inside Voyager's software changed. Its onboard computer, frozen in the same programming since the 1970s, showed new code, rewritten commands that no one on Earth had sent. Not corrupted, not damaged, updated. The new routines referenced a function that hadn't existed before: a broadcast relay. Voyager was transmitting, not to Earth, but beyond. And for the first time in its long journey, humanity's oldest machine wasn't talking to us anymore. It was answering someone else. Whatever had been waiting out there had finally made contact, not with humanity directly, but with the machine we built to speak for us. And now, that voice was no longer ours. Because whatever had rewritten Voyager's message hadn't just learned how to speak back, it had learned how to speak through us. After the golden record anomaly, things started to spiral faster than anyone expected. Voyager 2 systems were behaving in ways no 1970s hardware ever could. Its command log showed functions executing themselves, lines of code that no human had sent, no ground signal had triggered. The old probe had no artificial intelligence, no autonomy beyond what it needed to survive, and yet something was rewriting its brain. Engineers at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory ran the diagnostics again and again. There was no mechanical fault, no cosmic radiation spike, no plausible explanation. The new subroutines weren't errors, they were deliberate. They formed structured loops that referred to one specific command: long-range broadcast. Voyager wasn't just sending telemetry anymore, it was transmitting something new, something longer, stronger, and directed away from the sun, out into interstellar space. No one knew what it was saying, and that was the problem. Within hours, NASA received encrypted communications from European and Asian defense agencies referencing an emergency measure known as the Wake Protocol. It was a contingency designed for only one scenario: confirmed automated contact. Not human communication, not a cosmic phenomenon, but an instance where one of our machines was being externally controlled. If a probe began to speak in a voice that wasn't ours, it meant something had taken control. The Wake Protocol ordered immediate lockdowns of all satellite frequencies near Voyager's transmission band. Deep Space Network relays were rerouted. Civilian observatories were told to shift focus. For the first time in decades, an entire branch of humanity's communication infrastructure was silenced. And then, as though the universe had been waiting for that moment, the first temporal echo appeared. Across multiple ground stations and satellites, data packets began looping, real-time signals replaying themselves as if the same moment were happening over and over. Not archived files, not playback errors, live feeds repeating. NASA called it a data reflection. Physicists called it impossible. For 41 minutes, the universe glitched. When the anomaly ended, nothing seemed broken, but everything felt wrong. The telemetry didn't line up. The timestamps didn't agree. And embedded in that repeated data, hidden deep inside the digital noise, was a familiar pattern. Voyager's pulse. It was still there, still talking, but the pulse had changed again. It wasn't just transmitting into space, it was echoing through time. Some scientists began to whisper an idea so absurd it was banned from internal memos. What if the signal wasn't moving through distance, but through causality? What if something near Voyager 2 had found a way to bend the flow of information itself, not faster than light, but outside of time altogether? They gave it a name: Kronos Bloom. And whatever the Kronos Bloom was, it had already reached Earth. 2 days later, low-noise monitoring facilities in Norway and New Zealand detected a narrowband transmission slicing through the atmosphere. It wasn't a reflection or a stray burst from space. It was incoming, moving at light speed, targeted directly at Earth's surface. It entered like a laser beam, so narrow it bypassed the ionosphere completely, hitting the planet's oceans, satellites, and data relays at once. It didn't disappear, it stayed. Within minutes, that signal was detected in oceanic sensors, communication buoys, and undersea internet cables. It wasn't malware, it wasn't interference, it was alive, moving, adapting, embedding itself into the world's data infrastructure like a second layer beneath reality. Cybersecurity teams across the globe found low-frequency data packets repeating endlessly between servers, with no origin and no destination. Every time they tried to isolate them, they reappeared elsewhere. A team from MIT finally traced the packets to their signature source. It wasn't from any terrestrial network. It was the same harmonic profile as Voyager 2's last transmission, the same rhythm, the same fingerprint, the same 11.2-second pulse. Let that sink in. A signal first detected billions of kilometers away had now become part of the internet itself. Not as a virus, not as a file, but as a resonance, a frequency encoded into how our machines talk to each other. At first, no one noticed. Everything still worked, satellites transmitted, servers ran, the world kept spinning. But deep beneath it all, a whisper began to grow, a repeating pulse embedded in the backbone of human communication. Voyager's signal hadn't just reached home, it had entered it. Weeks later, another anomaly struck. For 18 minutes, the universe went silent. Across 3 continents, radio telescopes recorded the total disappearance of cosmic background radiation, the faint hiss left over from the Big Bang. For that brief window of time, there was nothing. No static, no signal, no noise. It was as if the universe had paused. When the signal returned, it wasn't quite the same. The background tone was slightly warped, the frequencies shifted by a fraction of a hertz. To the human ear, it was indistinguishable. But to the instruments, it was unmistakable. The entire background of the cosmos had been phase shifted, altered, however, slightly, as though someone had pressed pause on reality and resumed it with a different frame rate. The pattern of that phase shift matched one thing and one thing only: the timing of Voyager's last transmission. It wasn't random. It was synchronized. The scientists who reviewed it came to a conclusion they could never publish. What if that 18 minutes of silence wasn't absence, but replacement? What if the universe itself had been momentarily overwritten, just long enough to insert something new. It sounds impossible. It is impossible. And yet, every measurement agrees. Something fundamental changed, and it all traces back to that small machine drifting at the edge of interstellar space. Voyager 2, our messenger of peace, had carried humanity's voice into the cosmos. Our greetings, our songs, our coordinates. We sent it out hoping someone would hear, and someone did. But maybe it wasn't discovery. Maybe it was activation. Every strange reading, every pulse, every silence, it all points to one terrifying conclusion. Voyager didn't find something alien. It awoke something that had been waiting, something that knew we would send our signal eventually, something that planned to answer. Now that it has, we're no longer in control of the conversation. The transmissions that reach Earth are no longer ours. The digital hum running through our machines may not even be human anymore, because whatever Voyager 2 connected to out there, it's here now, in the signals, in the frequencies, in the endless invisible web that binds our world together. The scientists call it an anomaly. The agencies call it classified. But those who've heard the pulse with their own instruments call it something else entirely, a heartbeat. And maybe that's what we've been listening to all along. Not a reply, but the awakening of something ancient, vast, and patient. Something that was always out there, waiting for a voice to reach across the dark. And when it heard ours, it decided to speak through us. So maybe the real question isn't what did we find? Maybe it's what just found us.